Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Mel and today we're going to be doing an if you like this, then maybe try this. This is the first time I think I've ever done this on my channel. I feel like I'm not great at it, but I did have a list of ones that I thought would be a good option, and so I wanted to share it with you guys. This is not necessarily a if you like this, try this, and if you like this, try this kind of scenario. Sometimes they will be very dependent on if you liked the first book, then try the second, but not necessarily if you like in the reverse, if that makes sense. I'll let you know which ones I feel like are in the reverse and which ones I don't, but I don't really have a whole lot to say other than that, so I guess let's just jump into the video. This is going to be a mix of fantasy and horror reads. There's kind of a smorgasbord of both put in here, so hopefully everyone will have something. There's actually a little bit of YA tossed in here as well. So the first one that I want to recommend is the fantasy romance one, and one that has been talked about a ton lately, so of course I had to at least mention it. If you like A Court of Thorns and Roses, maybe try Serpent in the Wings of Night. These are both fantasy romance. I think that they both deal with very similar topics, even though this one is fae and this one is vampires. A Court of Thorns and Roses, everybody knows what it's about. The second book in this series is well known for handling trauma and grief incredibly well. That's something that a lot of people really enjoy. A series that ages up as it goes. So the first book does kind of lean young adult, and then we continue to grow up with our main character. Whereas in Serpent in the Wings of Night, this is very much so an adult story. It's a little bit more spicy than A Court of Thorns and Roses, especially like in the first book. But this is following Aurea, who is a human in a world full of vampires, and she is going to be entered into a competition. If she wins, she gets a wish from the goddess. I loved this story. I thought that it was extremely well done. The second book, very similar to A Court of Thorns and Roses, does handle grief incredibly well. I thought that it was done in a way that just was gut-wrenching, but also captivating and engaging. She has absolutely beautiful writing. I know a lot of people that love ACOTAR that have read this book and really enjoyed it. However, I do want to mention that another one you could possibly compare this to is Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. This has a competition type element to the beginning of it as well. It is also fae, has kind of an arranged marriage trope, so I think that it's possible if you like this, you could also like Fortuna and vice versa. But I would definitely say that if you like ACOTAR, to try Serpent in the Wings of Night. I feel like everybody's already read ACOTAR, so I'm not going to tell you to do the reverse, but the reverse is also true. Next up, we have another fantasy, and that is if you like Malice by John Gwynne, perhaps try Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. This one is not a stretch because Ryan Cahill has said that he was heavily inspired by John Gwynne, so this one is just kind of a FYI more than me doing any kind of significant digging and lots of like connections between the books, because obviously he was inspired by it. But Malice by John Gwynne is a multifaceted story, mostly following a boy who is 15 and is just ready to go into the King's Guard as a man. But then we also follow a warrior who is trying to prove himself, a son of a king who thinks that he is God's gift to the realm, and it's got a lot of politics, it's got a lot of character moments in it that I quite enjoyed. This is thick, it's a series, but this one, Of Blood and Fire, also follows a young boy who is trying to prove himself. He lives in this smaller town. One day, somebody comes to town and destroys it, and he gets set off onto this journey with elves and dragons, etc. I think that this one is a little bit more classic fantasy style than Malice is, but they do have very similar tropes, and you can tell that the kind of underlying themes and goals are very similar between the two of these. But just so that you know, if you like Malice, maybe try Of Blood and Fire. If you like Of Blood and Fire, definitely read Malice. Then let's toss in a horror. The first one is, if you like Into the Drowning Deep, try From Below. Into the Drowning Deep is a very science-heavy water horror. It's following a woman that lost her sister when the sister went on a mockumentary to try to figure out what was going on in the Mariana Trench, but they got some horrifying footage back from that voyage, and now this whole crew is setting off to try to figure out what happened to the mockumentary, and they're going to bite off a little bit more than they can chew. So we do have, again, a film type story. We have water and water horror and science involved in this one. And from below, we're following a group, a film crew that is going to be investigating a sunken ship and trying to figure out what happened to this sunken ship. So again, we have film in both of these, water and sea in both of these. This one is a dual timeline where it tells you what happened both on the ship in the 1900s, I don't even remember when the ship sunk, and then present day as well. Both of these do a really good job with suspense. This one, much more science heavy than From Below, so if you're looking for something that's more horror, less science, go with From Below. If you're looking for something that's more science fiction with horror, try Into the Drowning Deep. I do think if you like either one of these, then I would recommend trying the other. What's next? What's next? Let's do just a straight up science fiction next. So I don't actually own the one that I'm going to be comparing this to, but I'm going to say if you like Project Hail Mary, try Mickey 7. Project Hail Mary is, again, a very scientific thriller book. Obviously, Andy Weir does that best. One of the things that Andy Weir is known for is adding humor to his stories and adding a lot of like relationships as well as scientific world building to his stories. This one is following a guy who must go onto a ship to the sun to try to figure out what is happening with the sun and why it is losing all of its energy. And then Mickey 7 is about a man who is, I can't remember exactly what they're called, but basically they're people that are intended to be sacrificed for missions over and over and over again because they can essentially be reincarnated over and over and over again. So Mickey 7 is the 7th rendition of Mickey, and he gets involved in some political scheming, etc. This one has a lot of humor in it as well. I personally loved Project Hail Mary and didn't particularly like Mickey 7, but I think that the humor and the type of story is very similar. The humor is not what made me love Project Hail Mary. The world building and the science was. So I think if you loved the humor in Project Hail Mary, Mickey 7 could really work for you. I think if you liked Mickey 7, Project Hail Mary is just a step up from that. So pretty confident that if you liked it, you'll like Project Hail Mary. If you like City of Brass, maybe try The Stardust Thief. So I have, full disclosure, not completely finished The Stardust Thief, but I did start it enough to have a pretty good idea of the comparisons between these two. City of Brass is following Nari, who is a thief in Cairo, and she gets herself into a little bit of trouble when she accidentally summons a djinn and gets swept off to the magical city of Daevabad. This one is heavily political, but it is set, again, in that kind of Egyptian, Middle Eastern type world with that lore and djinn, and I just found it incredibly fascinating. This is one of my favorite series. It is adult, but it is a very accessible adult. I think that if you're somebody coming in from young adult into adult, this would be a great place to start. So if you like that one, I would suggest potentially trying The Stardust Thief, which is also set in Egypt in the Middle East. It is following djinn, but this is a more adventure type story when a thief, just like Narhi, is told by the king that she must go after an artifact for him. And again, it is a very adventure type story from what I read of it, and this I think leans a little bit more into the young adult sphere than the adult, unlike City of Brass, but I still think that if you like City of Brass, then you could also really like The Stardust Thief as well. And I do think probably if you like The Stardust Thief, you should still give City of Brass a try. These could probably go in the reverse order. Now, I can't believe that I'm actually going to be saying this live on the internet because it's probably going to come back to bite me in the butt. But you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to make a comparison and say this is one of those that I don't think would work in reverse. Just throwing that out there. If you liked Lord of the Rings, try The Ember Blade by Chris Whitting. So Lord of the Rings, classic fantasy story. Everyone loves it. Adventure. Group gets together and is going on a quest. Very classic, obviously. I mean, everybody knows what Lord of the Rings is about. But then we have Ember Blade. This one is following two young boys who get thrown into a prison, and they get rescued from this prison by a man who is setting off to try to steal the Ember Blade. And it's basically said that whoever has the Ember Blade controls the entire empire. It's very much so gathering the band together, going on a quest, slow, character-driven type of story. And so I do feel like that if you like the Lord of the Rings and that type of storytelling, that slow, getting the band together, adventure, going on a quest type of thing, that the Ember Blade could really work for you. Obviously, very different types of writing styles, very different types of characters, although I think there are some characters in The Lord of the Rings that you could definitely see paralleled in the Ember Blade for sure, but I don't think that if you loved the Ember Blade that you'll necessarily love The Lord of the Rings. So this is one of those that I'm even hesitant to put on the internet because I don't feel like you should compare The Lord of the Rings to anything, much less a more modern fantasy book. But I'm not saying that they're equal in caliber. I'm just saying, and I'm not saying that they're not equal in caliber. I'm just saying that they do have similar themes and that if you like one, you could end up liking the other. So don't come for me. Okay, probably like 3 or 4 more to go. If you liked Mistborn or The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, I actually think you should try Winds of Strife by UG Gutman. Mistborn, everyone knows what this one is about. It is following Vin, who is a Mistborn, and Mistborn are those that can swallow all different kinds of metals, and these metals give them power. So it's a very hard magic system with clear rules, clear consequences, clear things that you can do. And we're following her when she enters this group with a man called Cahill, who is trying to overthrow the new regime. So it's got a little bit of like a heist story in it. It's definitely a revolution and a rebellion type of story. So hard magic system, revolution, rebellion. I think that because of those, you could like Winds of Strife by UG Gutman. This is a indie book that is following Nye, who is a witch, a part of the witches of the current empire, and they are always trying to banish like the women witches from the world. This has a magic system of revolving around emotion, and you can pull from different emotions to accomplish different tasks. So again, a very hard magic system. We do have a rebellion in this, so I think that they definitely are reminiscent of one another in those two regards. I do love Brandon Sanderson, and I liked Mistborn a bit better than I did Winds of Strife, but I do think that UG Gutman is going to be one of those that I will definitely go back to, and I'm very excited for book 2. So if you like a hard magic system, you want a rebellion, I think that you could definitely enjoy this one as well. So again, for another more obvious one that's been around, everyone is talking about recently, but again, just kind of had to throw it out there. Everybody's talking about it, so I might as well put it on this list. If you liked Fireborn by Rosie Aramunda, try Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yaris. This is a YA story, a series that I have absolutely been adoring this year. It is a completed trilogy following Annie and Lee. Annie is the daughter of a peasant, and Lee is the son of a king. The old regime was overthrown, and Lee is now kind of on the same footing as everyone else, and both of them are battling to become the next dragon rider. This is very political. It does involve overcoming things and learning who you are. It does have dragons, very cool dragon type bond where the dragon and the dragon rider are very bonded together and can kind of speak to each other in their own way. I think this series is very strong. It is young adult. The politics to me in this are not young adult. The relationships I suppose are, but not young adult. They're like 17, 18 years old. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. But if you like it, I would suggest trying Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yaris. This is more of a new adult type story, so aged up just a little bit from Fireborn. It has some more on-page spicy scenes. It's following Violet, who is the daughter of the, like, what is she, like a general or something in this world, and she thought that she was going to become a scribe, but her mother says, no, you are going to become a dragon rider. And not everyone makes it through the school to become a dragon rider, only a few of them do. She has this enemies to lovers type relationship with one of the teenagers that was part of the original rebellion. And I just thought that this was extremely well done. There are dragons in this. There are a really strong connection between dragons and dragon riders. I do think that the scope is going to open up a lot. Both of these in the first book have a sort of school setting, a strategy type school setting where they are learning to be a part of the warfare and the regime that they're a part of now and learning how to deal with their dragons. So I think both of those are very reminiscent of one another. I think that if you like one, you could like the other. These are pretty interchangeable. All right, one more horror before we finish out with the very last fantasy. This is again one of those that I don't think is going to work in reverse. Just preface that. If you liked Bunny, try Mary by Nat Cassidy. Bunny is a very strange story. I don't even really know how to describe Bunny. I don't know how to tell you what the plot is, other than it's a woman who is in a college for writing, I believe, and she gets drawn into this cult where they call each other Bunny, and some very, very strange things go on. This is a bonkers book. It's still one of those that when I think about it, I'm like, did I give it a 1 star? Did I give it a 4 star? I don't really know. It's weird. It's off the wall. It kind of goes a little crazy, especially toward the end. But if you liked that about this story, I think you could end up liking Mary by Nat Cassidy. This one is a little bit more nuanced to me than Bunny was. I think it's a little bit stronger in its character work and in its plotting. This is following Mary, who is going through menopause, or so she's told, and she's trying to kind of get her life together. Her aunt calls her and says that she's dying and she needs Mary to come home and take care of her. But there's a lot of weird things going on, and Mary is having some strange visions and some strange thoughts, and she's trying to get all of that under control. There are similar vibes in this. I don't really want to tell you what the vibe is, because I feel like that would be spoiler for Mary. But I do think that if you liked Bunny and those types of vibes, that you could really like Mary as well. I will say that I don't know if you loved Mary if you will like Bunny, but you could try it. I personally think that this one was a much stronger book, much more entertaining book, but both of them kind of go off their rocker and have a very unhinged ending. And last but not least, I have one book, but I have not got the other any longer, and that is if you liked A Touch of Light, try Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. I think that this one is also one that could work in reverse. A Touch of Light is a very complex, drop-you-in kind of story following 3 main characters. One is the son of a king, and he is trying to deal with the loss of his lover, is a griffin rider, and she is part of this force that is doing work for the goddess and trying to help overrun death, essentially. And then we have another character who is told that she is crazy, and she is part of a clan kind of out in the woods, and every time emotions get the best of her, bad things happen. This one does have a magical companion type storyline, which I do think works very well with Ninth Reign. Ninth Reign is also kind of a drop you in, a figure it out kind of story. Both of them have politics with one another. Both of them have underlying horror elements. I wouldn't say that this one is horror, and I wouldn't necessarily say that Ninth Reign is horror either, but there are some of those horrific elements. The biggest difference is Ninth Reign is very much so sci-fi leaning, whereas Touch of Light is not at all. So I think if you liked Touch of Light, you could like Ninth Reign. I don't know if you liked Ninth Reign if you would like Touch of Light. So just got to keep that in mind. But they do have that kind of drop you in type of, they do both have magical companions, which I think are really strong. And I think if you liked one, you could like the other. So there we go, guys. Those are my, I think, 10 if you like this, then try this type of books. Some of them are obviously more obvious than others, but hopefully you found some books in here that you were like, oh, I haven't read that yet and I really liked that book, so let me try it. Come back, let me know down in the comments below if you decide to pick up any because of this video and what you thought of the comparison. If you've already read both and you want to let me know, please, please, please comment that down below. I think that this is such an interesting way to pick your next book. It's a lot of fun. As always, if you just want to say that you were here and hanging out, leave me a bee emoji, because every time you see me looking over there, it's because we've got a bee or a wasp flying by the window. It's very summertime here right now. Thank you guys so very much for watching. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are all in the description box down below. Please give me a big thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!